And welcome back to the Book and Life podcast. Well, today I scored on the ultimate guest list. I am telling you. Wait till you meet this author. She is by far one of the most respected authors I've ever had on this show. In fact, she might even be up there with Marianne Curley. Gotta wait and see who it is, because it's going to be a lot of fun. But first, as you know, we're going to have our weekly advert with Marianne Curley's The Shadow, Time Guardian, Book 4. The battle is over, the war is won, the prophecy complete, but life can't just pick up where it left off for Ethan. Struggling to cope with tragic loss, at odds with friends in the guard, he finds himself adrift, jumping at shadows and sensing someone who can't possibly be there. Blaming herself for the goddess Lathina's death, Giselle swears revenge and fulfill the immortals' plan for world domination, but Giselle hadn't planned on love, and that leaves her with an unbearable choice. Should she follow her heart, the strings of a goddess short on praise, but high on expectation, who continues to pull her from the grave? As the Guard and the Order battle through the past and into an impossible future, darkness lurks around every corner. The fight for the world's survival rests with just one. Is it friend or foe who stands in the shadows? Now, after that riveting blurb, let's welcome the gorgeous, the amazingly talented, and gosh, I wish she was my best friend, Lisa Childs.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I mean, I was blown away when I did my research for you. 85 novels published.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'm coming up on the ones that are coming out in June, along with, I'll be up to 87 published, and then I just signed a contract that will bring me to over 100 with Harlequin alone. So
that's
I got a lot of books to write.
It's crazy, because I'm just about to actually submit my first ever Harlequin novel. And I am scared to death because I am dyslexic. And I'm pretty sure that's going to come through in my submission, even though I've edited it like a billion times, and my editor, Stephanie, must be pulling her hair out, because I think she's like, get on with this cowboy story, girl. So, yeah. No, I mean, I love Harlequin, and it's so funny because one of the books I used to steal as a kid was Mills and Boon, which is the British version.
Yeah.
And of course, it was always the modern version my mother had stuck in her drawer, and I used to sneak them out, and I would read them, and then she'd find me, shout at me, and take them back. But no, like, I loved those. I always thought they were so well, and I actually made a couple of friends who are editors in Mills and Boon, and I feel so honored that they're my friends. But your stuff looks exceptional. I'm excited to read this twin story you've got here.
Oh, the Bronc Riders twin surprise.
Yeah, that's the one. It looks fantastic. I love the ones with babies in it. I don't know why. It seems to be my Achilles heel that if there's like a baby surprise. I think I read the one where the girl has quads because she had like IVF, and it was all like, oh, that one was amazing. And I totally kind of felt for her, because I'm like, girl, you got quads. That's got to be like the roughest schedule going. Could you imagine doing that as a single mother? Like, holy crap. Totally admire her. But that's what I love about Harlequin, is they really do push the boundaries on what you would think is like a romantic story. And that's what I adore about them. And then I watched your trailer. Oh, your trailer blew my mind. Bane Island is now on my TBR for sure. I love the look of that.
Like, yeah, Kensington did that trailer, and it's just, I love it so much. It's like,
Kensington is a favorite publisher of mine. I so wish I could have a chance to get in with them. But yeah, they put out some of the top published novels. I mean, I would say that they're challenging some of the bigger publishers now, like Simon & Schuster, and I think they're right up there with like I would say Penguin and Random House now, because they're really pushing that boundaries, and I think they're more than just an umbrella company now. I don't know if you agree.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I was so fortunate to get included in an anthology with Lisa Jackson and Alexandra Ivy, and it made the New York Times bestseller list #5. It was
Wow.
and they just do so much promotion for us. It's they're a wonderful publisher.
And that's the thing. Nowadays, it really is about the quality of your marketing program
Hmm.
for books, because the I would say the field is so saturated with so many different kinds of books. If you're on Amazon, you totally get lost,
Yeah.
because there's like
Hmm.
there's self-published, and then there's indie publishers, and then mainstream publishers. It's kind of hard to break through that noise. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I just love them, and funnily enough, it's one of the companies I want to work with, because I just started working with a publicity company. So I'm like, I'm kind of getting in with some of the publishers, because some of them have sent people my way. But I would love to just be able to give the publishers another kind of route to kind of get those voices out there, because I actually take on a lot of authors that have never had that opportunity to push, because there's so many that if it's a really good indie book, I will go out of my way to kind of have them on the show and talk about it, push it, because that's kind of how we find the next voices.
Yeah, and look at
You know?
50 Shades of Grey. I mean, that was, a lot of just her own pushing and word of mouth, and you know,
Yeah,
just yeah,
she broke the market with that one.
yeah,
I mean, the normal everyday person, not the like the really intense romance reader, had no clue what erotica was, and essentially she blew open the door for everybody,
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
now everybody's like, oh, there's an erotica world. What is this? And I mean, I adore Shirley Cannon, who's actually coming on our show soon. She does that so well.
hmm,
Hers. There's a lot of people that can do these erotic scenes, and they just don't come off very well.
yeah,
It just comes off as very kind of brutish, and I always say like a bit overbearing. But there's some people that can actually write a smooth scene that just fits perfectly. But it
yes,
means that that doesn't dominate the story. Like you could take those scenes out, and the story would still make sense. At least that's what my mentors always taught me about writing erotica. They's like, Crystal, we need to imagine that you've taken all these hot scenes out, and just your story still makes sense. And I'm like, gosh, that's a different way of looking at it.
hmm.
So yeah, it was a good lesson though. So no, I am super excited, and I do love a good romantic suspense. So I cannot wait for Hot Shot Hero Under Fire.
Yep,
Would
that's
you
the
like to
one
tell
that's
us a little
coming
bit about that?
out. I started that series in Harlequin Blaze. They're hotshot firefighters, the ones that go out
Ooh,
to the wildfires. And that was just, Blaze is more romance, but I always kind of sneak in a little bit of mystery. And I had this,
yeah,
the group was getting sabotaged, things were happening. And when when Blaze closed that line, I wanted to continue the series and had a great editor who was like, let's bring it over to Harlequin romantic suspense. And so now I get to expand on the mysteries, and it's a fun line. It's a fun story because it's one of those you know enemies to
lovers kind of
lovers, and
story.
so it
Yeah,
just has that passion, and you don't know who to trust, and it's hopefully very exciting read, fast paced, and but still with a lot of camaraderie with the firefighters and the
I do
heroine
love a good
Courtney.
firefighter book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. No.
and I think you do them so well, because I've had the pleasures of reading snippets and samples of your work, and I adore it. So you probably know Emily Rodmell, right? That's
um,
over there with suspense.
Emily
She's
and
she's in Harlequin sort of suspense, but she also does Harlequin love inspired suspense. So a lot of
okay.
hers is like the dogs, and she's a big one for
Okay.
the dogs. I
Yeah, I don't
love her.
personally know her, but yeah, I've been writing some of the Love and Stuff inspired, the special releases, the cold cases, and they're starting the
Yeah,
Protector series that I have a book in there too. And yeah, they're a lot of fun to write too.
I just think because she has a page and she works so closely with writers that are wanting to get into the publishers.
Okay.
And she just offers such great advice. And she's totally going to be embarrassed that I've included her in this podcast. But I mean, she's been such an encouragement for me and I think so many others because a lot of us are really nervous about submitting to Harlequin. I think there's this kind of order around Harlequin that you've got to be like the best writer in the world to get in. And I think a lot of us are like, oh, nerves, nerves, nerves. And I certainly have that because recently myself, I got invited by Nikki Claus and another beautiful editor over at HarperCollins, and I was at Harlequin, I should say. And I was just like, I still haven't written the synopsis. I think I'm stalling because I have nerves, but you have definitely been a good encouragement to get myself out there and to continue on the fight to get
Oh
there.
yeah. They have
Yeah,
the warmest, most welcoming editors, and you never need to be afraid of submitting to them. Everybody's so nice, um, and they will give you such good advice. They'll work with you, and I've talked to being over 20 years in this
yeah,
business now. As of this month, it was 21 years ago that I sold my first book. I got the call, and it was out 20 years ago. My first book was out this month. And, I went to the conferences and I met them and met other writers trying to break in. And, the amount of feedback the editors will give you to work on your story and make sure you get it to where they can publish it. They want to publish you, so they will work so hard with you to get the story. And it's just
yeah,
the authors I know who haven't published are the ones who weren't willing to make the changes or couldn't figure it out, and were or they just they took so long to get them back. And
yeah.
that's the thing. You gotta follow through and just
I'm sort
there's
of
nothing to be
learning
scared
their
of.
groove. Yeah, I'm learning their groove because I always have a problem whereas I write in my very own particular voice. So for me, I had to kind of learn their voice and
Yeah.
what they expect in the way of writing. So that was where I kind of was like falling flat because I couldn't really understand what I was doing wrong. For instance, I was doing a medical one for them, and I was so focused on having this really interesting medical case that I was kind of almost forgetting about the love story. But I also was very much a Grey's Anatomy fan, so there was a bit of Grey's in there with like, the younger doctor falling for her teacher and them going, don't think we can pull this one off, Crystal. This one's, the power difference here is the problem. And I just couldn't figure out how to rewrite that story. And then I was so lucky because Ride With Me came. And it's a cowboy series with disabled children in it and friends, enemies to friends story. But she also fosters kids. So, like, you've got this really amazing sweetheart girl and this guy where you're like, dude, get to the point. He's like one of these really nervous guys. And I thought, this is such a different cowboy story. And so far, fingers crossed, they've asked me a couple of times on PitchMad to actually submit it. So I'm just
Good.
working up the courage, which is
Oh,
my confidence level is usually what kills me. So
oh,
yeah,
yeah. You can be your own worst enemy when it comes to that. It's like you just have to, trust that they want to help you. So if they ask to see a story, they're going to give you good advice. They're going to, and the other, the biggest advice or the advice I offer the most when people ask me how to get into Harlequin, I've talked to people and they'll be like, I'll ask, well, what line are you targeting? And they have no idea. And it's like, okay, you
yeah,
need to read the lines, to know
yep.
where your story fits. And
And that's what I did because I'm a Diane Palmer fan. I love her work,
me
and
too.
I asked her to be on the show, but she's unfortunately not well enough to take part, and I
Mm,
was so heartbroken for her.
yeah.
but yeah, like I read her novels and I'm like, I can do this. Like this is the line that I can do. I can do the heartwarming line because to me it was more heartwarming hers stories than it was anything else. And I'm like, I'm gonna target the heartwarming line, and I just gotta hope that I'm really good at it. And they don't tell me, by the way, you've written a different line and you've submitted it to the wrong one. That's my worry, is that it ends up being wrong. But no, like she totally got me into the way of writing, and I think because I have a lot of the old medical stories, like the old medical romance stories, that's maybe where I'm going wrong. That I need to actually buy some of the newer ones to get my story out.
Janice Lynn is a friend of mine, and she's actually a physician or a nurse practitioner. So,
wow.
Yeah, she writes the most amazing medicals.
I will definitely check her out because I was just buying like the old ones I could find on eBay because I wasn't sure like who to follow to get the kind of the groove of it, and the ones that I did seem to pick kind of led me down the wrong way because I was imitating a lot of their voice in my own work. And I think that's where I went wrong. So I'm learning as I'm going. But if I get one in the door, I will be taking a childhood life dream. Because I always said that one day I would either write for EastEnders in Britain, which is the biggest soap opera, or I would at least write for Mills and Boon. But I got one of my dreams because I'm now under the mentorship of Shona Land, as part of the 1 in 4 Writers Coalition program for disabled writers. So I'm ticking one box.
Yeah.
I just hope I do really well with him because I hear he's one of the most amazing people in the business. So I'm sort of one of these authors that just hasn't stuck to one thing. I'm an author, I screenwrite, and then of course I podcast. So it's like I just haven't chosen a brand, I think, is the problem.
Well, that's kind of been my issue because I've written everything from women's fiction when Harlequin had their next line, with the older heroines. I've written that. I've written vampires. I've written for most the lines I think Harlequin has, although I couldn't get a medical in either. So, I don't feel
you and me are on the same track with that one. So we're definitely fine. I mean, I look at the medical line and I think, well, I've had arthritis since I was 2.5 years old. So I know all the procedures for British hospitals, right? I don't obviously know the Americans. But I think because I've been in that and I was a trainee midwife, it's like I can finally have my dream as a midwife, but without killing my body. And I think that's kind of why I want to write a really awesome midwife story for Mills and Boon. And it's on my writing list for this year. And it's called Healing the Midwife's Broken Heart.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a very Harlequin title, which is I've gone wrong sometimes with the titles. So I'm thinking that's a good one. And then I kind of wanted to do like a series of midwives that are kind of in this maternity ward, and all these new consultants come in and then they end up falling for them. At least that, and I have one that's about, a single dad who ends up falling in love with a midwife because it's the same ward that the mother of his child died in, and he ends up meeting this midwife who actually delivered his baby and he knew nothing about her. And they end up falling in love, and she ends up telling him that she was a midwife that saved the baby but couldn't save her. So we'll see if that one works. But it's got a bit of tragedy to it, but I think it could work out.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so I loved maternity. That was my favorite because you're bringing life into the world.
Mm-hmm.
But there is that edge of deadly sort of sadness where, things go wrong and stuff like that. So I always think that's a really good one to see out there. So
yeah, my daughter is my youngest daughter is a doctor, and so that was what I was wanting to do was do the medicals kind of based on like the Grey's Anatomy, that intern year and all that. And
I love that show so much.
I know, me too.
I can't help myself. I actually started in the UK. There was we actually had Casualty, which was the first medical soap opera, and it's still running. still running. And you're talking like it must be 30 odd years old now, that show. And I loved it because you never knew what you were going to get every episode. And it's like you follow nurses and you follow doctors and you follow trainee doctors and you follow some of the craziest patients. You think, really? But they're really good at keeping like the procedure correct, how NHS works. It's all in there. And I kind of think that's where the fire for doing a medical romance kind of came from, was the good old fashioned, sadly sounding Casualty from the UK. You can actually see old episodes of Casualty if you're in the US on YouTube.
Oh.
And also you can see Casualty through the American version of the BBC. I think it's called BBC America.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love my Midsummer Murders and those shows.
Now you're talking my language, girl. Yeah, and I think you get EastEnders as well, don't you?
I don't know. I know I get the BBC or the I do the British TV, but I think I do it through Acorn. I think it's
Acorn. Right. Yeah, you should be able to get EastEnders and Casualty through that, because I use it because I don't have a TV. My husband doesn't believe in televisions. I don't get it. So everything I watch is through the computer. So everyone thinks I'm constantly addicted to the computer, but I'm actually watching things. Like I have Amazon Prime and I have Netflix, so I'm always watching stuff. So yeah, that's kind of funny actually.
I think that inspires ideas too. I love watching. I love the midsummer atmosphere. That's what my Bane Island series kind of has. That that creepy atmosphere and the supporting characters that are eccentric, and I love that.
Well, you should check out the Shetland series. That's really good.
I think I have. I'll have to. Who's the main actor on that one?
Oh gosh, I haven't seen it in so long. I came from there. That's how I know of the show.
Yeah.
It's so funny because it's nothing like the island. We almost laugh because it's like there's only one person on the island that actually acts in it. So it's Inspector Douglas Henshaw who's in it. And then you've also got Detective Stephen Robertson. And it's so funny because Stephen Robertson's actually the Shetlander who acts in it. His actual name is Sandy Wilson in the show, but it's Stephen Robertson who's the actor. But yeah, it's honestly, it's kind of funny because they've got a Glaswegian playing a Shetlander and the accent could be more different. So Shetlanders tend to giggle together about it because we're like, this is nothing like our island. This is like the imaginary multiverse of what Shetland would be like if murderers got onto the island. So yeah, we laugh about that quite a lot. But it has actually led me to writing a crime novel, which I've got support from a 40 hours, the first 48 hours detective who's just retired a few years ago. So I'm writing it, but I'm slightly nervous that it's maybe slightly ghoulish. And then I talked to a friend of mine called M.W. Craven, who's given me hope that there's a publisher out there that might take a slightly more kind of different approach to crime novels. Because like everyone I know, because I only know the romance market, I don't know the crime market. So I'm trying to branch out a little bit because I don't want to do sports romance for the rest of my life, because I did wrestling romance was my area. And I really broke the barrier with that because wrestling romance wasn't a thing. I think Laurie Foster did one book in that series. But me and Joe, we came out with a series that was completely based on wrestling and wrestling lifestyle, because wrestling is such a myth in America. And it is here too, because we have actually a huge wrestling market in Britain. It's just not, people don't know how to market it, and they don't know how to pinpoint that market. So Joe and me have kind of been breaking that, we're sort of hitting the wall with a lot of fists at the moment and hoping that we break it. But yeah, it was such an honor to work with The Wrestler. And I grew up writing wrestling stuff. So I've got my 3D character thing down, because the one thing they teach us in wrestling training when you're training to be a wrestling writer is you have to be able to answer why to everything.
Yeah.
So say you pick a rose for your heroine, you have to be able to explain why you've picked the rose out of all the other flowers. It's kind of a very interesting way of writing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to have purpose to everything. Yep.
Yeah, and it's so weird because you have to be able to go into a room, and I'm only 5 foot sort of two, sort of pushing two. I'm not really all the way to two, but I'm just under 5 foot two, and I weigh maybe 40 kilos. So, I'm very light, very skinny, and usually I had very brightly dyed hair, and I would be going to a guy that's maybe 6'2", 200 or 300 pounds, and I've got to convince him not only to do what I'm suggesting, but then to also believe in the storyline, believe in the matches, believe in the promo, and hope that he doesn't think I've just butchered his character. Which is harder than you think. People don't realize it's very intimidating. So I used to come across, like, they would come in with their really big character, and I would have I had to have a big personality to match them.
Yeah.
That is so much energy for a night's work, honestly. But it did teach me a lot, and one of the best teachers I ever had was a guy called Scott, who everyone knows as Raven, because he read one of my novels and he went, "You do realize you have a plot hole the size of an Arctic truck right there?" And I went, I love you, Raven, but I really want to stick this book somewhere the sun doesn't shine." And he was like, "Okay." That was it. But he hates romance novels, which is so funny. But yeah, he's been one of the best teachers I've ever had. And now, talking to you, I can say that I've had one of the best conversations with a romance writer possible. So this could be a lot of fun.
So sweet. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. The wrestling, my oldest stepson, he has got me into that. We have gone to wrestling matches, and we laugh because I've got a thing for Roman Reigns. I don't know if you know.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah, my cover art fact sheet. See, there's been a couple times where, okay, this guy's supposed to look like Roman Reigns.
Well, I can put you in touch with his agent, and I'm sure they can work out something. Because, funnily enough, this is something that people don't actually realize, is wrestlers love doing book covers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it gives them a brand new audience to tap into.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember is romance readers stick around, right? Yeah. Because they could be the worst men going, and we would still love them because we believe in our hearts that they're redeemable. So yeah, it's funny because I kind of knew Rhino, and I know Raven, and I kind of know that lot, and it's weird because I look at AEW and a lot of my friends are over there now. That's one for you to check out, because if you want really good looking guys, that's the show.
Okay.
I highly recommend Adam Cole and Hangman Adam Page, because they are real cuties. But there's some really gorgeous wrestlers who would absolutely adore being on a book cover, but they don't know how to get into our world, and we don't know how to get into theirs. So it's kind of like that. That's another reason I want to do this, is to break down the wall and say, "Hey, boys, there's a way in. Just talk to them. We are just like, we're just like you. We have to, be these authors and be approachable, but it's a business for us too." And yeah, I mean, I know some of the wrestlers would just absolutely adore to be on book covers. Really would, and I could actually put you in touch with a wrestling manager who sort of organizes all those kind of things. So I will, once this is over, I'll pass you on his details, and you just let him know Crystal sent you, and you'll be able to see what magic. Because, I mean, even some of the girls on the shows are stunning.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're, like, absolutely normal stunning. And we're seeing sort of an influx of Japanese wrestlers now who are gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And they have such funny personalities, too, that you're laughing with them. You're not laughing at them. Yeah. You're laughing with them. But you're also thinking, wow, this person's really interesting. Like, you've got one girl, she sings through her entire match.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. No.
So yeah, I mean, you should tell your older son, let's have a watch of AEW and see what it's like. And I'll hook you up with the manager, because he actually runs the NWA, which is a legendary old wrestling company. And he can sort of help you go in that direction of some really gorgeous boys. In fact, I believe he knows a Roman Reigns lookalike. So there you go.
No? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you'd be surprised what I know. You know, being in the wrestling business as long as I have, I've learned quite a few things. So let's dive into books. What is the book you read most recently that stuck with you the most?
Oh, I have fallen for Richard Osman's The Thursday Murder Club with the old
I've heard so
people
much
solving.
about that.
Oh, it is so funny. And then I read the last one I just read was his The Man Who Died Twice. And now I see
Oh,
one's coming out in September, and I can't wait to
to read that one.
pre-order that and read that. Yeah, they're really neat. I have always loved older people. I spent a lot of
Yeah,
time with my grandma. My dad's going to be 94 in July, and he is just so lively, and that that's what I like about that series. It's older people who are solving these murders, and they're right in the
yeah.
thick of it, and it's just they're fun. They're fun books
I
to read.
love that too. It's funny you mentioned that. I have to recommend Marzi Taylor's Shetland series because it's set on a sailing boat,
Oh,
and it's a woman who's sort of kind of later on in life, and she's ends up involved with this detective. But it's such a good series because she's actually working out all these murders, plus she's sailing a boat. I mean, that's not
yeah.
an unusual kind of thing, and she's a bestseller too. But she's not a very known bestseller outside the UK, so I recommend her.
Okay.
She was
Yeah.
actually our last week's guest on the Book and Life podcast, and she was one of my mentors when I was a teenager. That makes her feel a little old, so I'm trying not to let away how old I am. But no, she was fantastic, and she actually writes the books in Shetland, and she sails a sailing boat, so everything's sort of really realistic and things like that. And if
Oh,
you really want to go somewhere that's purely magical, if you can actually spend a summer in Shetland, the light of the day never goes away, so you never get nightfall. It is a writer's paradise, I'm telling you. Because
I bet.
you can sit up late and you can watch colors dancing in the sky, and it's what they call the Northern Lights, or in
Okay.
Shetland we call them the Peary Dancers, and it is so beautiful. And I must admit, any writer I've sent to Shetland has gotten super addicted to writing there during the summer. There's quite a few that go back,
Oh,
and
neat.
it's a beautiful place, and it's one of the best places because it's got fresh seafood, fresh fish. It's got the best sort of everything's homegrown in the island. So every vegetable, milk, everything is done on that island that they can. In fact, they have their own brand of whiskey, beer, vodka, gin. The only thing they don't do is wine.
Oh,
But
oh, that would be hard.
yeah, it would. Well, it's to do with the weather,
Oh,
temperatures and stuff. But they actually own a Jamaican rum company in the Caribbean, and they ship that rum from the Caribbean to Shetland, and it is very hard to get. But you can get it in the States now, and it's called Stewart's Rum, and it does taste exactly like it is in the islands, like what you would expect of the islands. Um, Gosh, I think the boys that run Stuart's Rum will be sending me a message saying thank you for the plug. But it is because it just tastes like the island, and it yeah, totally drags me away to a different world. I love it. I'm a bit like you though. I kind of I like my wine too. So
yeah.
I'm dreaming of Napa Valley at some point. Who do you wish that, if you had time to just sit and enjoy an author or a series, who would it be and why?
um, Well, I love Richard Osman's. That's the ones I like. If I have a minute that I'm not writing, because I have a million deadlines right now, I was reading his. I want to reread the Bridgerton series, because that's, and I've read them all
Yep.
before, but it's like I want to sit down and reread every single one now. And
Is that because you're secretly gotten into the series and you're
oh,
like, oh,
I liked the series beforehand, and then yeah, I have watched the Netflix. Yeah, I've missed those. I
I
can't
think
wait for
Netflix
the
did a
next.
really good job on that one, actually.
Hmm.
Because that's, again, a Shona Land production.
Yep.
And I think she does such a great job with it. I don't think people realize just how good a job that they did with it. So yeah, no, I'm with you. You should check out Sanditon on Acorn, because that's a really good series.
What is it?
It's Sanditon.
Okay.
It was actually a Jane Austen series that
Oh.
she never completed the novel, I don't think. But this is a series based off that, and I would say it's probably one of the best they've done since Downton Abbey.
Oh,
So yeah,
okay.
I
Yeah,
really
I
love
love
that
that.
one. Have you tried the Gilded Age yet?
No, nope.
That one is an American show, set in New York.
Oh, I've been meaning to watch that one. I didn't.
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
it is fantastic. I loved every minute of that show because it's actually the producer of Downton Abbey that wrote it.
Oh, yeah, Julian Fellows. Is that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore that series. He
Now
does
I
such a
saw
good
it
job on it.
advertised, and then I didn't. Yeah, I'll have to go back and watch that.
I honestly think it's one of the best series that has come out this year, next to Bridgerton. But he's very he doesn't sort of romanticize it too much. There is that element of threat that they have to be careful of society and how New York society is very divided at that time. There's the old New York society and the new New York society, or the new money as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he balances it really well. I was really, really impressed with it, to be honest with you.
Well, I
So
did
yeah,
such a
I
great
can't.
job with Downton Abbey. I love Downton Abbey. I gotta
I
get
do
to see
too.
the movie. I didn't go this
The
weekend
movie
because
is
it got released.
fantastic from what I've heard.
Oh,
Because I've watched like some of the tidbits that's coming out for it, and yeah, it's utterly amazing.
oh, I have
Um,
to get to that.
have you watched The Anatomy of Scandal yet? That's on Netflix. Because
Mm-mm.
the lassie that was in Downton Abbey is actually in that series.
Okay.
Oh, she does amazing in that series. She really does.
What? Who was she in Downton Abbey? Who did?
Remember the oldest daughter in
Yeah.
Downton Abbey? It's her that plays the lead
Oh,
in
Michelle
Anatomy
Dockery.
of Scandal. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
She does such a phenomenal job. Honestly, I adored her. I
Oh,
totally
I have
adored
to.
her in that. I was skeptical about trying it because everyone told me it was really good, and then I was like, because I've got the book, and I'm like, should I read the book or should I watch it? Because like, if you read the book, it's never the same.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like sitting on the fence, and then one of my last guests was like, no, you really got to go watch it, and I did, and I was like, okay, totally right on that one. I'll give him that. So
Well,
yeah, I
yeah.
adored it.
I'll have to
Is
check
there an
that one out.
author, past and present, who's influenced you and it sort of to write? And then is there an author, past and present, who's made you excited about reading books?
Um, Inspired me has been Nora Roberts. I mean, when I wrote all the time, I started in high school, and she was just her
Yeah,
career was taking off then, and she had all the books out, and I'm prolific, and it's like, here's somebody who's doing it, and I love how she develops characters, and I love her
yeah,
dialogue. I love how real everybody is, and she just inspired me. It's just I love her books, and I love to see somebody who's prolific, and I've
mhm,
gone to conferences where she's spoken, and this is her job. She
yeah,
works
exactly.
hard in all those hours a day, and it's that's the kind of work ethic that I try to have. I do procrastinate when I shouldn't, but it's like I
I'm the
try to
same.
spend
I'm
as
the same.
many
Yeah,
hours. I try to spend as many hours in this chair as I can, just working as hard as I can to
But
get
there
my
is
stories
nothing worse
written.
when your bum goes numb and you're like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, we gotta move.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? Why did I sit here so long?" Yeah, no, I feel those feels. In fact, my husband said you're probably better off riding in an armchair, Crystal, because I have a tendency that I sit for too long, I get sore because of the
Yeah.
arthritis. So he got me a laptop in this like bamboo table that kind of like folds down.
Oh, good.
And he's just like, "Here, right in the armchair so I don't have to listen to you moan about how sore your mum is." And I was like, "All right." So it's a good tip. If you can get like a chair that's almost like an armchair and you can slide it onto your desk, that's what I recommend because it's more comfy that way. And you get more writing done because you're not kind of like moving around going, "Ooh, this sore." So yeah, I have your feelings on that. But no, she's got a work ethic that I absolutely adore as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not think that she kind of made it okay to be a prolific writer in more genres than one.
Yes.
I think that too, because the only other person that I know that wrote novels prolifically in more than one genre was Catherine Cookson. I don't know if you've heard of her.
That doesn't sound as familiar. Yeah.
Catherine Cookson is a dame from the UK. She's one of the most best-selling writers from the UK. She made her name in India, funnily enough. And she wrote books like Tilly Trotter and The Moth, and these are everyday people in that time period. So, you're going into a time period of maybe just after the war or during the war or before the war. She's encapsulated that world perfectly. But it's everyday people. She's not doing all the posh people and the rich people. And because she was a servant, she actually started her life as a servant in a house. And she cleaned houses. She picked up all these amazing characters and she puts them in the books, but she puts in the things that everyday people dealt with. So she talks about, her books started coming out in the 90s, early 90s. And when you read hers, it's like she targets young, sort of teenage pregnancy. She targeted racism. She targeted inequality. She was targeting things that we're only now seeing in a more mainstream market. So she was really big on sort of raising awareness for female domestics, like the level of female violence that people endure. But she does it in such a way that the voice feels like you're listening to the story of an everyday person.
Mm.
And her technique was she wrote exactly how she would talk. And that was how she made the readers connect and make it feel like she was reading a working class person. So I always highly recommend her when people maybe haven't heard of her before, because you get to almost slip into a totally different world that you wouldn't otherwise get to see. And it's legitimate worlds in England that actually were there at the time period.
Oh.
So if you really like sort of the Downton Abbeys and the Bridgertons, I really recommend her. And she, talk about prolific. I think if she was like around for a little bit longer, she'd probably be sort of challenging you for that 100 novel title reign here. But yeah, I just finished getting all her books, and I think half of my bookcase is just her.
Oh.
And she did a mental health awareness book called Hamilton. And this girl essentially creates this horse in her mind. And this horse would appear every time she was getting upset or she was anxious or she was stressed. And the horse makes it funny. So she makes almost it easy to understand mental health because she makes it funny. And she also had disability in that book and how people are treated with disabilities and how we're treated differently. She did such an amazing job bringing up issues, but without making it obvious that she was bringing up an issue. So she's one to check out and see if you...
I will have to do that.
Yeah, I always recommend her to every major writer because, she's kind of disappearing now and I don't want everyone to forget her. But yeah, she's incredible. She definitely inspired me. She's my kick up the ass novel that I go and read when I feel too scared to write or feel really down on myself. So what genre are you drawn to when you visit a bookshop or you're looking at books online?
I grew up like you reading romance novels, but I was lucky. My mom and grandma just gave them to me. I started reading, when I
You
was
didn't have
11.
to sneak into the room and steal them
No,
at the sock drawer?
no, they let me start reading them. I was 11 years old reading, and they were the
Oh, I was
Milton Blues.
younger. I was 8.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and they were just, I loved started with I think it was Lucy Gordon that did the Outback. My mom loved Australia and the Outback romances, and it was
I'm
always
the
the
same. I'm a
governess.
McLeod Girls fan. Yes,
The
yes.
governess taking care of the widowed cattleman's kids, and it was
Kids,
just,
yep.
I started reading those and then switched over to Silhouette Desire books. They would be the cowboys or the, business tycoon. And I grew up reading those and just always wanted to write for them. And yeah,
That's where you ended up. Yeah.
yep.
So what made you switch over to crime? I'm kind of curious about that.
Well, actually, the first book, The Return of the Lawman, I did the romantic suspense line of Harlequin. It was Harlequin Intrigue is where I started. So, they romance and mystery. So I love doing that, doing those. And I like writing different things. I like having the variety. It keeps my mind sharp. I think it keeps my writing sharp to kind of switch around. I did, uh, they had Silhouette Nocturne, Harlequin Nocturne books, and I did a witch hunt series that
Oh,
those
I
are
like
some
the
of my
side of the
favorite.
witch hunt series.
Yeah, those were some of my favorite books to write, and I did some vampires and just that's
See,
the
I want to
thing.
read this vampire one because you mentioned it before, and I'm like, I bet you I can't get it now.
Oh, I bet. I don't know if you go on. Harlequin has most of the. I think the backlist are on. You can get them on Kindle or you can
Yeah, I'll
download
have to
them.
look because it's weird. I was saying to my husband, I struggle reading on Kindle, and I don't know if it's my dyslexia or what it is, but I find it's worse if I'm reading off a screen. So I tend to buy paperbacks, which is why my house looks like a public library. No, seriously, he's built more bookcases for me than he ever did for any book when he was shop fitting. He's built more bookcases for me than he's built shelves for shops. Because he
Well, I
literally
think
said,
that's.
Crystal, if you get any more bookcases, this literally will be a public library.
I think isn't that how Nora Roberts met her second husband? She
Yep,
hired him to build bookshelves. It's like,
exactly. And I'm like, well, I just missed a step. I got him on husband number 1. So, but
you were
he's
lucky.
amazing. Like my man, he's like the total opposite of me. He drives motorcycles and he's Scottish through and through. He's got a really strong Glaswegian accent. And then there's me, who's this 5'1" girl from Shetland, but should have been born in the States because I love my shotguns and my pickup trucks and my horses. And my dad goes, "You're never getting a pickup truck, not ever." Because I was always what I wanted. I wanted my dad to buy a pickup truck just so that I could. It would have been easier transporting all the horse riding gear before I had my accident. Because I could have thrown the saddle in the back and everything at the back, and it would just been easier. But now I can't ride because I had, as I was saying to you earlier, I had a jaw joint replacement surgery. So my second jaw joints, and I
Ooh.
can't put a helmet on now. So
Oh.
I can't ride anymore. So this fully qualified horse rider can't go back on horseback in the UK because in the UK you have to wear a helmet.
Oh.
But if I'm in the US, I don't.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to come out to the US to ride. My husband's like, you are not going on a horse without a chest protector and a helmet. I'm like,
man, we do that all the time. I mean, I grew up, I
just
had friends
wait.
who had horses and, we just hop up on there. We didn't have any protection. And then the horse, of course, I would ride all the time later went through a bakery window during a parade. My mom was like, you're never getting on that horse again.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I've come off so many times. Like when you're learning to jump, you do come off. I mean, it's guaranteed you're going to come off. And my mom always worried about my ribs, so she made me wear this chest protector. And I swear it made it hurt more when you landed than if you didn't have it on. So I always had a helmet and a chest protector when I was jumping. But I'm qualified to do jumping, dressage. I got invited to the international dressage classes in my area, which is the British dressage champion runs them. And I was so sad. I have never been able to go because I can't put a helmet on because it puts pressure on my jaw joints for too long. So it was sad, but at least I can ride a bit horses, and I got to grow up with them. So hopefully, I keep saying to husband, like, when I make it and I make it big, I will have horses for the kids and they can grow up with the horses and I can just enjoy watching them ride and I can like work with them in the ring because then I don't have to wear a helmet or, be on horseback. And he's like, no, we're not getting horses. We got 2 cats. You're lucky you've got 2 cats. But we will see. We will see. I'm determined, so we'll see.
I have one here. You've probably heard her because she's like a baby when she's quiet till I get on the phone or on a meeting, and then she starts crying.
I have 2. And just before you came on, he came up here, and I'm like, you go bed. And I've sort of got him trained, so if I say bed, he does go and lie down. And he's got this sort of cushion on my sofa. He's flattened down into this perfect circle, and he sleeps there. And his brother sleeps on the other sofa, because we have to have 2 sofas. Oh, oh, that's so cute. I love that she has to sleep lying next to you. My 2 don't want to sleep anywhere near me. They're like on the other side of the room, like, yeah, Ma, we need peace. But no, I just love animals.
She's my writing buddy. She just showed up one day at my house, like probably 15 years ago, and she's been the best cat I ever had. This feral cat came out of the woods.
They make the best, I swear, because like our youngest, he was a kitten. He was like less than 3 weeks old, and they found him in the car engine.
Oh.
And I rescued him from the rescue center because they phoned me and they said, hi, Crystal, just so you know, we've got this kitten who was found in an engine block.
Oh.
And would you like to take him? Because he's very anxious. He got separated from his mom and the other kittens, and he climbed into the car for heat. And I was like, oh no, what am I taking on here? And he came with like a lot of skin warnings, and he came with a lot of, possibility of having stomach issues and anxiety issues, and I already had an anxiety cat, and I thought maybe I'll like level them out, with the anxiety thing. But honestly, the 2 of them fight all the time. But they have these cute moments where I'll go through to the bedroom because they've managed to open the bedroom door, and they're snuggled up in the duvet together, and they look too cute for me to move them, and I'm like, oh, sod it. Well, here we go. I'll leave you 2 alone, and then you'll keep me up all night. But hey-ho.
Yeah, that's her thing. Then she'll start crying in the middle of the night because she wants to play after she slept all day.
Yeah, or they want to sleep with you. Like, they're great. My cats will sleep with me, but if my husband's in bed, they walk up and down him, and then they play fight on him, and he's like, oh, for fuck's... And he has to get up, and he has to lock them out, and then he comes back to bed, and then all we hear in the morning is, Mama, love you, repeated on like replay, because my oldest, he was the only cat in the house, so he used to mimic me all the time, and I managed to teach him to say mama, but because I used to say I love you to Ian all the time, he picked up I love you, and he strung them together, so I get greeted every morning with mama, love you. So yeah, I always melt when that happens, and I open the door a bit early, and Ian growls at me. He's like, I was sleeping! I'm like, well, you're not there. Is there been a book that you've ever picked up and you just wished that you hadn't started it?
I mean, I am limited with time, so there's some that I'm like, I've put down after I've started them, but it hasn't been, I can't think of like any particular one lately, but it's just like if I didn't find the characters likable, like if the main character wasn't somebody I could, root for, even like if I like flawed characters, but if they're just like no redeeming character or, quality
features,
character, those are the ones I'll put down. But, not anybody, in particular that I can, not a writer I can think of that
You
more,
wished you'd never started, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I've been in situations where I picked up a book and I've not bothered to read the back, which is a really bad habit of me because I forget to read the blurbs. And I get caught with books. Like, I'll start reading them and I'll be like, wait, because I'll judge it by the cover, and I know it's the worst thing to do. I know it is. And I'll pick it up and I'll know I never do this unless I know the writer. And I'll start reading the writer's work, and then I'll usually stop myself and go, what genre was this again? Because there's so many writers I pick up and I think, okay, they're just going to write fantasy. And then I realize, oh, actually, no, they're writing a thriller, which is totally outside of what I'm expecting. Because Rachel Kane did that to me. She was a fantasy YA writer. So I picked up her murder series and didn't realize, oh, crud, that this was a murder mystery thriller. And then I was like, wait, Rachel, you got me. You got me. It's so sad because she's now passed away, but her work was so brilliant. It really was.
Yeah, her name sounds familiar. I'm trying to think of what was...
Rachel Kane did the Morganville Vampire series. She did Stormfront. She did Bitter Falls, which is her murder mystery one, or it's murder mystery / thriller because it's got a whole load of levels to it. And I think the other one she did was Prince and I, which was a rewrite of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. And it's really good. It's actually really well done. But she was, again, very prolific. All her series were quite long. I love the way she kind of put her voice onto paper. It was very much like you could flow with it easy. You could understand it very easily. Oh, I know what the other one was. It was the Librarian series. It was a series about libraries that run the world, and they've all the knowledge and all the books, and books aren't printed anymore. They're all on these Kindle kind of things. And she's weird. She actually input sort of physics into her work.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's a flashback to she worked in a nuclear plant. So I think it was a kind of tie into that, because on her way to work, she would go to this cafe and she would write for, I think it was like a couple of hours before work and a couple of hours after work. And that's what she would do. She would just go to the cafe, stick a couple of headphones on, and she would just write until she became a full-time writer. And a lot of her ideas came from driving to and from conventions. So she would drive through a place and then something would spark in her mind and she'd be like, oh, this would be a good series. And that was kind of how she did a lot of her work. So I always admire her for that. I just wish I would read more of her blurbs before I pick up the book. So I don't get caught off guard as much. But yeah, anything she writes is brilliant. So I got to ask this question because we're going into the writing portion of this podcast. How did you go about creating the darker characters that we see in your storylines? The ones that kind of keep the hero and the heroine apart, and the real mystery, sometimes the villain of it, or you probably know where I'm going with this, but that sort of excitement. I call it the excitement elements, but people generally use it as darker elements.
Yeah, it's the dark elements. I have so much fun writing villains. Some of the villains, my last Bodyguard subseries just concluded, and there was this very dangerous drug dealer kind of ruled this town, and that he was he was up for trial for murder, and he was trying to get rid of everybody and get out of it. And he was actually just a real fun character to write. And, you kind of give them motivation too, just like, your main characters have to have goal, motivation, and conflict. The same thing with the bad characters. If, you give them that backstory of kind of what motivates them, and of course, I've also written the serial killers where there's, they're just kind of evil to begin with.
Exactly.
A lot of times, if you give them, you give them the backstory that explains how they got to this point. Nobody's ever been kind to them, that kind of thing, or they're just always used to getting their way and being controlling. And then if somebody, doesn't do what they want to do, That's the book I just finished writing. Is going to be the love inspired cold case, and that's kind of the thing with the villain in that book. He was just always used to getting his way, and when people don't give him what he wants, things get ugly. So, just that kind of my Bane Island series with Kensington. That's been a lot of fun because there's the ongoing, backstory line of this psychiatric hospital was just this horrible place, 50 years ago, and families would send their, troubled daughters there, and like horrible things were done to them. Their babies were taken, and the guy who ran the place, is like in his 90s, and he's still alive, and his grandsons have now redone the place into a, this posh spa where people go. It's, total wellness of the mind and body, and they're trying to do good things, and he's still there, and he's just, even in his
Picking people
90s,
off.
he's still pretty evil, but
Yeah.
he's kind of a fun evil, and it's like, it's just, you find the
Fun.
writing different types of characters are just kind of fun, and finding what motivates them. And
So do you kind of use music as a way of getting into that sort of frame of mind when you're writing, when you're switching from sort of doing a more light-hearted series to a darker one, or do you go and watch something on the television to try and get you into that zone?
I'm I say less, I'm an avid reader, but I don't read as much as I would like. I do a lot
Yeah.
of slow jogging on this trail near my house, and that's like kind of where I plot and where I'm thinking, and get out in nature and just fresh air, and that gets my sinuses all going. But just
Oh, I
out
know
and
that feeling. Yes, I know
yeah,
that feeling.
yeah, and just getting
I
out
think that's a secret flaw to all of us writers. God help us with the hay fever.
with the allergies and yeah.
Yep.
But no, I'll just, and then conversations will come to me, descriptions, just that whole kind of, it's, sometimes music inspires me. Like my first book, The Return of the Lawman, is kind of based on the song that The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, where
All right.
somebody
Yeah.
died in the jail cell years ago, and this whole kind of, he was kind of railroaded as guilty for something he didn't do, and that kind
Yeah.
of inspired the story. And
It's
so
funny because
sometimes
music does that
does.
for every one of us. Like I don't think I've met a writer that hasn't heard a song or gone to a concert and then come home with like an entire new book in their minds. Like
Yeah.
I think we can pick a story out of the air just walking, from our local shop to home
Yeah.
because our minds are always working. I know for me, if I go into my mind, it's like a universe. If I go down one path, I'm going into sort of one world and one set of stories, and if I come out of there, I can go down. And it's like sometimes I get lost. Don't get me wrong, I will take the wrong path and I'll end up on a different series, writing a different series than what I should be writing. It's a hazard as a writer. We all have that. But I actually plot more than I've ever done in my life. So I do a lot of chapter breakdowns. So I break down every single chapter, and the plot, the verb is always there, and I kind of work my way through it that way. And I did do that, and then funnily enough, my hubby put away one of my notebooks, and he lost it. And it had like, 24 novels in it.
Oh, no.
So a lot of them have been picked recently, and I have been trying my hardest to sort of pull that back and re-break that novel down into a different genre. And I'm just like, I keep looking at him sometimes like I want to strangle you for losing that. Because it was, what it's like, because you make notes in the columns and they end up looking like jumbled messes, but that's our whole process of working through it.
That's kind of, I don't know what I do with my notebook. I have, like the notebook, and I have notes in there, and then I put stickies on top of the pages so I know which notes are for which book I'm working on. And
I do that too.
Totally get that.
I'm super organized with writing, but in my actual life, I'm very disorganized. Like my husband's like, you've got a whole filing system for your emails, a whole filing system for your novels. how is it you're so disorganized in life? It's like, I don't know. It's not like I'm OCD with anything else. So he always thinks it's funny because, like, if I get into a really good book that I'm writing, do you do this? Do you forget things? Like, I'll forget about the dishes or the washing, or
Oh,
I
yeah.
just totally get, and sometimes I forget to eat. I just totally get in the novel, and Ian will be like, because there's nights he's come home from driving the buses, and he sort of shook my shoulder, and I've made it to bed. I've done good. I've made it to bed, and he'll be like, "Have you been writing all day?" And the reason he can tell is my hair is usually up in all these different directions because humidity is horrible for my hair. I probably have a coffee stain somewhere because I've probably been drinking coffee and writing. And the cats will look apparently starved. They're not actually starved. They're just trying to do their dad out of food. Because I do remember to feed the cats. When I go for a pee, I feed the cats and then I go back. But yeah, like I get locked into these worlds and sometimes I just forget everything else. Do you have times like that where you just forget everything?
Oh, yeah. There will be times where it's like, okay, like I'll have to do my bill paying like before I know I'm going to be sitting down to write because it's like, okay, I'm going to pay you early so I don't forget about you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've done that with my editor, yeah. Or she'll be like, Crystal, we're halfway through this book. You've forgotten to do your payments. Oh, shoot. Like, and then I have to go and like dig it out and try. Yeah, no, I've been there a few times. I had a beautiful orchid my husband bought me last year, and the cats managed to eat it.
Oh.
I had gotten so absorbed in a book I didn't notice that the cats had chewed it to death. I thought, you know that where you're just like, I should have been paying attention.
I know. That's why I don't have plants, because I would forget to water them, definitely. It's like my Mother's Day plants for my daughters don't last that long because it's like,
I say everyone, just get me cut flowers. They last longer because I don't have to remember to water them. I can just stick them in a vase. They sit on my fireplace, and then that way, if I forget them, at least, do you know what I mean? They're looking pretty, and they make the house look a little bit more tidy than it actually is. So my husband's like a hurricane when he comes in. Everything's just thrown off in every direction. And then I look over at his seat, and he's got like a million tins of juice and bottles of water, and he loves his models, like his 3D tabletop models, and he has them everywhere. And then I just sort of think, I would have been safer staying in the book because that's a lot of tidying to do. Wait, do I not have another novel to write? I use that as my excuse when my mother-in-law comes around. I'm like, oh, I was writing. Well, she doesn't realize the mess. But no, I love it when other writers say that they get lost too, because then I don't feel quite so lonely. So what inspired you to enter particularly the romance world with your writing voice rather than any other genre?
It's like growing up reading the Harlequins, that was what I wanted to write. I just loved.
Harlequin got you.
Yep, and the guarantee of the happy ending, the positive. There's so much. It's like I shudder to turn on the news. I can't. It's like all that. I'm, seeing everything happening in the world. It's like you really need that escape. Now more than ever.
Do. Yeah.
And
you do.
Having that, being able to pick up a romance novel and knowing I'm going to get a happy ending. They may go through a lot of drama before they get there, but they're when you set that book down, you're happy because they got their happily ever after. And that just I've had readers tell me, this horrible thing happened in my life, but for a while, because of your book, I escaped. And that was, that's like the best.
I will definitely be taking your books into the hospital because I made the mistake of taking arcs in that I've never read the writer before, right? There's this story before I say it. I took in Fiona Cummings' The Collector, which was one of her really creepy serial killer novels. Yeah. And of course I didn't read the blurb as Crystal does, and I started reading it, and the serial killer's the janitor in the hospital.
Oh no.
To say that I had a very interesting trip into the hospital that time would have been the understatement. I
You
I
can see
jumped
it all.
awake anytime anyone came near me. I was totally watching the janitor and giving the stink eyes to say, "Don't come near me." And I even said that to her. So like, it made me forget about why I was in, but at the same time, I think the janitor thought I was maybe a bit creepy by the end. But I do that. Like, I'll take in a Rachel Kane, or I'll take in somebody I know that I'm going to enjoy, and I will read their work while I'm in because it makes me forget. And particularly last year, reading was my escape because I spent most of last year in the hospital. And, when I was stuck in, I was the only patient reading in ICU. I was the only person awake in ICU as well. Um, so yeah, I would sit with my book and I would just sort of read. In fact, there was no nightlights in HDU at the time, so they actually went and they turned on the light for the what would have been the bed next to me, so that I could actually read. And then they tucked me in like so that I had my back to it, so it dropped right on my book, so I could read. Which I was so grateful for, because when I went to high dependency, they wouldn't give me my glasses, so I couldn't see anything. And I couldn't talk, so I had to keep making the symbol for glasses. And bless them, they had no clue what I was talking about. And then my husband came in and he's like, "Give her glasses, for goodness sake. That's what she's trying to tell you." And I was like, "Thank goodness for my husband." But bless him, he did bring me a hardback. Now, everyone knows the new Twilight book came out last year, and my husband brought me the new Twilight book, which is a huge, huge 1,000-odd page book. And of course, I've got lines coming in and out my arms, and I've got wires connected everywhere. And he gives me that book to read. I had 3 novels in my bag he could have choose from, and he picked the biggest, heaviest book, and I was like, "Really?" But it got me through it, and it was a really great distraction. And I must admit, I understand like why people need novels now more than ever. And I don't think the end of escaping into books has kind of come. I think we'll be doing a lot more in the future, especially with everything that's happening in the world, more now than ever. And I think the better the novel, the better the experience for people anyway. So yeah, no, I loved your answer. It was great. So when you write your books, is it a movie in your head, or is it like a jigsaw puzzle that you need to put together?
It depends on the book. A lot of times, probably more like a movie. Sometimes with the mysteries, especially, it winds up being a jigsaw puzzle, or like I'll feel like I'm quilting sometimes, which I'm not a very crafty person, but I'll have all these threads, these dangling threads, and then like to get to tie them up at the end. And sometimes I didn't even realize I started this thread, and then I'll be wrapping it up and I'll be like, "Oh, that's why I wrote that in that beginning part," and
Yep.
showed this scene, and it's like, oh, it all comes together. And so some of it almost feels like subconsciously you're laying some of this groundwork, so that's the jigsaw puzzle ones where it's like, oh, that's where that piece fits now.
Of course, yeah. Have you ever had an editor say, "Hey, you forgot a thread"?
No, not so much. I'm trying to think. Nope, that's not been. Usually, it's the editors will, you got to keep the conflict going between the characters, and I think that's a lot of mistakes writers make.
Of course,
People
yeah.
trying to break into Harlequin. It's like they don't give the reason. Why aren't they just in love on page 1? They've got to have their conflict, and it's got to be big enough to keep them apart. For most of the book, and it's like,
Yeah,
with
exactly.
me, I can have a killer keeping them apart, but there should be something to their personalities, some reason why they're reluctant to fall in love or reluctant to trust this person. They got to have their inner conflict too. So that would be the thing I've had, where it's like, okay, you've got the killer keeping them apart, but what else? What else is?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I always think it's funny because I write so much conflict and I have so much meat. Sometimes the editors say to me, "You gotta thin it down a bit. You gotta keep some for the next one." That's usually where I kind of fall flat on my face. Is like I give it too much rather than having too little conflict. So that's usually where I kind of stub my toe. Which character has stayed with you the most or the longest in your writing career so far?
Oh, I would say because I have this bodyguard series that I started. I started in Harlequin Intrigue. It shows that there's 13 in the series. There's 13 with Harlequin Romantic Suspense, but I wrote
Yeah.
there were 7 before that that were in
Oh,
Intrigue, and
wow.
Penny Payne Lynch is the mom of the original bodyguards, and she's just this tough lady who lost her husband when the oldest boys were 15, and she raised the kids on her own, but she has this positive attitude. She's one of the characters that has stayed with me. I was real close to my mom, and she just kind of has that personality that, nurturing, take care of everybody, has a little bit of a sixth sense of, she always knows when one of her kids is in danger, kind of adopts all the kids, all the each brother starts his own branch of the bodyguard business, and she adopts their workers like they're her kids, and she's
Of
a
course,
character
yeah.
who stuck with me. The Bain Island series, I love the creepy grandfather. James Bainsworth is like one of my favorite characters because,
Yeah.
uh, he's just that creepy, manipulative. He's fun to write. And then in my Bachelor Cowboy series, I've got Sadie Haven is the great grandmother to these little orphan boys, and she is very determined to make everybody find their life partner, and she's just this matchmaker, and she's a real fun character too.
I like the sound of that. Yeah. I'm weird because I I love a lot of my characters. Like I have a character called Harold who sadly has not left me yet because he is throughout the entire Marie's World series, and he's got probably the biggest book I've ever written because I'm still writing it from time to time. And he will pop up out of nowhere and he'll annoy the living daylights out of me. So that's my longest card. And it doesn't matter what I'm writing, I can be writing something totally unrelated to him. No wrestling at all. And then all of a sudden, he will appear and I will be like, fine, I'll spend 5 minutes making notes on this, and then you need to go wait. You know that kind of way where you're like, Rrr.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's my one where I'm just like, oh, I wish he would just shut up. But I love him to bits, and he's actually based off of one of my friends, and I just really like him, and I think all of us need one of those characters that just kind of keeps us writing. And I think
Yeah.
he's definitely one of these ones that I can safely say, yeah, he keeps me writing. He keeps me interested in writing, if nothing else. I
Well,
still want to kill him on a day-to-day basis, but yeah.
you sound like me with the notebooks of ideas and books you want to get to and write, and that's I have that too. I have my list of, okay, when I have time, I'll write your story, I promise, and then I have just
Four
that.
years later kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'll get to you, but yeah, I know those characters that are like, okay, it's my turn, I want my story told. you know?
Yeah, and he's like this super kind of arrogant character. Like he's the sort of person that would say, "Well, what about me? What
Yep.
about me? Don't forget about me." That kind of ones, and I just get super annoyed with him, but I love him at the same time, and I'm just like, fine, I'm coming. I will make notes, but I will not like sit and write it. And I think I've got like 2 A4 pads of paper that is just full of his story and different parts that he's been involved in, and he's such a villainish character, but he's really adorable too because there's so much of him that people love, because he doesn't do anything that isn't for a particular reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I keep almost letting him take over my reading or my writing, because I think to myself, okay, fine, he's got a point. I need to give him like a chance here. Like a chance, just a chance. Write down whatever it is he's wanting me to write down. And it's funny because occasionally the person that I wrote him on will actually write to me and say, "Hey, how's that character that you based on me going?" Like just randomly, just just to see how I'm getting. And I go, "Oh my gosh!" Like I just get this reminder of, "Yep, this is definitely the guy I based him on." I love the guy I based him on to bits, but yeah, he does drives me a little insane, just a little bit, just a little bit. But I wouldn't have it any other way, I think. So I like getting lost in my. I get lost in a lot of my characters, and then particularly if I'm having a hard time with one of them, I will start talking to my husband about him as if he's a real person, and my husband will be like, "Wait, is this a person or a character, Crystal?" And I'll be like, well, and then I have to admit that it's a character I'm talking about, and he's like, "I don't care, it's not a real person." Is there a character that you wish you could write more about?
That I could write more about?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm trying to think. There's been I've had some characters, like I wrote the Bounty Hunter's Baby Surprise for Harlequin Romance, romantic suspense, some years ago now, and I've been getting letters from people who are just reading it. I don't know if it got reprinted. I get a lot of, Milton Boone copies, things come out later, different places, and people are asking for, there were some other bounty hunters in the book that were competitive with him, and people are asking for their stories. So it's like, yeah, I wish I could go back and write their stories. I had in that Witch Hunt series, I had a sister that had disappeared, and for years everybody was like, okay, what happened to Maria? And I was able to tell her story and get that one published, but it was one that it took a few years before her story came out, and it was like, oh, finally I get to here it is. Here's Maria.
Yeah, I know that feeling well. Yeah, like I think I've done 5 of the Marie's World series, and I get asked every so often, "Oh, when's the next one coming out?" Because every one of the characters is their own like a little bit of a standalone novel, so you get to learn about their backstory. And because I think they were done at sort of the beginning of my career, there's a lot of info dumping that goes on, and I think my writing's kind of growing and progressing. So when I do the new one, I'm almost terrified that they won't love it as much, because the writing is completely different to how book 1 is. So I had that worry, but I wish I had more time to sit and write the kind of the end of the Marie's World series. But I'm actually so caught up in writing material now that I might actually get into a mainstream publisher that I just don't have that time to go back and work on it. But I keep promising Joe that I will, and I will find time to go back and write on it. So what techniques have you found the most helpful, and is there one that you wish you hadn't tried?
Techniques? I think it's the thing that has helped me be the most prolific is, I think, what you were saying with the outlining, with the chapters. And I'll outline the scenes in the chapters, and some of my outlines, including dialogue, this and that. And it's like, because I have so much writing to do, and I used to work full time, raise kids, and
I'm about to start having kids, so I'm a bit worried myself as a writer. I'm like, because I know that
it's nice to get books done. So having that outline and knowing when I sat down, this is what I was going to write, that was hugely helpful to keep me on target for getting word count and getting the books done.
Because see, that's how I do mine. That's just a scribbled mess at the moment, but. Yeah, I get your point, and I know the viewers can't see this because it's only an audio-based podcast. But I literally had shown an A4 piece of paper with bullet points, things that I need to cover, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 for in the scene that are must remember. So I get it. I mean, I don't think I'd have started doing that unless I branched into screenwriting. I think when I branched into screenwriting 5 years ago, I was like, oh, this is an entirely different world. And it did teach me more about plotting, and it taught me more about what they call beats. I don't know if you use that either. But I didn't know anything about beats before. Like, every story has a beat. So instead of it being just the, what they call the 3 stages of when you have the start, the middle, and the end, this was more about the beats of the thing. So this is how you keep your conflict going, and this is how you keep the romantic elements going, and this is the beats were really important. And of course I had no idea what beats were, and I had to learn more about plotting and planning and stuff. And that's why when I meet someone like you who has that, because you guys haven't seen this, but her organization skills with the sticky notes and everything else is really amazing. But yeah, like, you're the first.
They didn't see my cat.
And the cat, of course, yeah. But it's really helpful because you do get lost in this kind of whirlwind writing, and then when you hit the wall, because we all hit walls at some point, that's what saves us, is the bullet points and the sticky notes and the little scribbles in the corners. Because I don't know about you, but I have seen myself start pulling my hair out, walking around the house, going, why can't I figure this part out? And my husband's like, didn't you just plot all this like 2 weeks ago? Where's your notebook?
But that's something, sometimes it's like, you'll have, with me anyways, I'll have written something and it's like, I can't move forward because it wasn't right. It wasn't in character or something. And a lot of times that's when I'll do my little jog and I'll be like, oh, I got to delete that. And you hate doing that, but it's like,
oh, everyone does. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't work. It's not the right thing. So yeah, I totally get that, where you have to figure out, okay, where did I go off the rails here?
I always get accused of being too wordy as well. Like, I don't have that problem in screenwriting because you don't have a lot of space in screenwriting. But particularly when I do my novels, I tend to be classed as too wordy. Like, I will go into he thought, or he expressed, or he tried, and I get told off by my editor. So she's like, there's that 4 again, or there's that thinking again. And she gets really turned with me about it. And I'm like, sorry. Because I'm trying so desperately hard to sometimes avoid using a word that I end up being more wordy than I should have been. Because and I swear it's the dyslexia, because you kind of get tied up in a knot in your head almost. So yeah, that's one of my things where it's one of the techniques I had to learn not to get in my own head too much. So going into your life, this is the part that everyone finds extremely exciting. So we're going into your life. What is the first thing that you do when you want to de-stress from editing and writing?
Would be the jogging. My husband and I will go for long walks. A lot of times he really loves plotting with me, and he loves cool. that like stage of it. And I'll tell him and he'll suggest something, and he thinks a lot of times it gets into the book, but it doesn't. But that's another story.
They all think that. They all think that. Yeah, my husband's the same. Yeah, if I'm plotting something, I'll start texting him, and he'll be like, you in the plot mood? Or we'll have conversations about things like, I'll say, if I blew up a motorbike, how would I do it? He'd be like, first of all, why are you blowing up a bike? And then I would get smacked up the side of the head. Don't think that, and you never do that again. And then you'll come with the answer to the question. But we have that kind of back and forth fun with each other, I think, when plotting. So I get that too. But for me, I cannot de-stress from writing if I don't walk away from it entirely. So I can't even go and read a book now because I'm almost like still in that writer's mind. So I go away and I sew, or I use the sewing machine, which my mother-in-law keeps having to fix. But I'll go away and I'll do something totally crafty that's still creative, but gets me out of my head. And then that way I de-stress enough that I can go back into writing later and sometimes get over the hump of whatever it is that I'm stuck on. So that for me is a super important thing to do. But I don't know if maybe um, that was, I wasn't sure if that was something all authors did or if it was just me. So
A lot of authors are crafty, and I used to crochet and all that, but now it's like with all the typing, my hands get so stiff. I can't do the crocheting like I used to. My husband and I, we do a lot of house projects. I mean, we're always like this weekend we redid our fireplace wall, and so there we do a lot of I do a lot of stuff like that where we're always house project that so it's creative, but yeah, non-working or non-writing related. So that
yeah,
would
so you
probably
got a
be the
break, yeah.
yep.
Yeah, no, I like that. So what hobbies do you wish that you could enjoy or ones that you would like to explore if you had the time?
Um, I wish I were craftier. I wish I could sew. I need to replace the zipper on my youngest son's coat, and it's like I have no idea how to run a sewing machine or anything
That's
like
a
that.
sewing
So
machine job. Yeah, you can't do that one
yeah,
by hand or you'll kill your
yeah,
fingers.
I
Yeah,
would.
no, I know that
That
one.
would be a you know skill I would like to have. I used to do a lot of painting and chalk art when I was younger, and it's like I would like to get back into that too.
Yeah, and I think it gives us almost like a detachment as well. I think it
Mhm.
clears the backlog of the brain and lets us move forward. And I know, like, I'm a paint by numbers girl. I cannot paint from scratch. I am terrible. So I might go and do my like diamond painting of a picture that I've ordered, or I'll do paint by numbers because I actually painted my wedding photograph
Oh,
by numbers the other day. It was really nice. It was really kind of sort of therapeutic. And it made my husband quite happy because he looks really good in it. Me, not so much, but that's the way it goes. Um, but yeah, I get what you're meaning about, especially with lockdown and everything. You can feel like all that you're doing is working,
yeah.
and you're not getting a break, especially authors, because we are home based. And I think
Hmm.
a lot of people got that necessary break because they were not in their offices, but they forget our office is wherever our computer is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand that. I had to put almost like a limit. If I go to bed with the computer, I'm not writing. I cannot write. I have to be watching something and sewing so that so I almost break my day up so it's not like a constant,
Yeah.
writing situation. Um, but my husband still thinks I'm absolutely writing crazy. So I guess you just answered this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think you're somebody that likes crafts? And if not, what is the other creative ways that you clear your mind?
Um, the crafting, yeah, it's not really me. I wish I was. My daughter's always coming up with the coolest stuff she, finds on Pinterest and makes these cool wreaths and all this crafty stuff. And it's like, no, I'm not really not that crafty. But yeah, I wish I could do more of those things. But then yeah, I'll do the house projects like to paint, uh, you know, transform stuff that way, make the space, you know, it's
Writer and
a little
yeah.
paint can make a huge difference in a house. It's just kind of fun doing that stuff, replacing cabinet door handles, little things.
Yeah, no, I get that. I love doing that too, but my husband, he was a joiner, and he's now, with the buses, we just don't have as much time to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I kind of miss those things as well, I must admit. Even though he reckons it takes me like a year to paint a wall, where it only takes him like 15 minutes. I like getting all the little nooks and crannies, and I'll have
Yep.
done like a quarter of the wall, and he's done like half the other wall. So yeah, he always used to tease me constantly about that. Now, my listeners and my followers all know that I have a long term illness that makes me slow down and appreciate the day. What makes you slow down and appreciate the day and smell the roses?
um, I love spending time with my family. My husband and I, the walks, just talking, talking about our day. I enjoy that. Talking to my friends, just, hearing about other people. I spend a lot of time with my dad. He's going to be 94 in July, and I got to track him down to spend time with him because he's always on the go. Just that family, I think, is the greatest joy in my life. Being
I
able
think
to
we all
spend time with
appreciate our
family.
families more now, especially with COVID and
Mm-hmm.
everything. It's given us a sense of life is about the things that we have in it, not material things, not about the hours we're putting in at the office. It's more we're more appreciative of things, I think, again. And
Yeah.
I'm sad that it's taken a pandemic to make everyone slow down and enjoy things. Um, but yeah, I'm seeing a lot more families together than I ever saw before.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's some good that's come out of this pandemic, if nothing else.
Yeah. They try and find the positive in everything. That's how I
I
like to look
do.
at life
I
too.
try because my life has been
Yeah.
such a fight that I have to kind of find that positives to keep me going. I think I would end up curled up in the ball crying some days.
Yeah. No,
What's
you're
your
an inspiration.
I try. I don't always make it there, but I try. So what's your favorite place to curl up during the day? Do you like the garden? Do you have a conservatory? Is there a reader's nook or a cafe?
Um, I am a homebody, so if it's cold and rainy, it would be our couch in front of the fireplace. If
Oh, I
it's
love that.
if it's sunny and nice, we do have a four-season room that's just full of sunshine, and it's usually where my kitty cat is laying in the sun. When we're not in here writing, because she spends, if I'm in the office, she's in here. She sometimes beats me here in the morning, like, okay, where are you? You need to get busy. You have
Yeah,
deadlines.
like you're late. That's your
Yeah,
boss. Your cat is your boss, I
she
think.
really is.
I know mine's is like that. I mean, he comes up to me, and if I'm late getting up in the morning, he's there at the door, and I can almost hear the paw tapping on the floor, like,
Yeah. Yeah,
you're
like they
late.
have a little watch on their paw, like, okay, it's
Yep.
time.
Well, it's funny because he's always been like that, and I think it's because he watches the sun. The only problem is when we switch to winter, because then he gets his clock confused, and he expects to be fed more because it's winter, you know. But yeah, he keeps me right, and I've had so many laughs with that cat. It's ridiculous. There's so many times I want to strangle him, though. FYI, Bob. So now we're going on to the game everybody either dreads or loves, and that is the word game. And I gave you the theme of a traditional cafe kind of sweet shop as your word game choices.
Okay.
I don't know if you picked up on that when you read the words.
I looked at it and I thought I'm gonna wing it and just be spontaneous with that. And
It's funny because I when I look at my guest and I research my guest, I try and come up with scenarios that I could imagine them in. And for me, I could just see you in this lovely high-end cafe with all these cream cakes and English fancies and coffee and stuff.
oh,
And
that
I
would be
thought, yep,
fun.
that would be a Lisa tea event. That's where you have the fancy hat and the nice dresses, and you go in there looking like $1,000,000 because that's how she does it. That to me was my secret impression of you when I was researching. So you get to know a little bit of how my mind works. It's strange, I know. So our
I
first
love
word
it.
is sweets.
So sweets, cinnamon roll. If I have to, we're just
Ooh,
doing, yeah.
I like those the best. I do. Those are my favorites. Okay, what about coffee?
Like it black with a little nutmeg in it.
Ooh, that's a good choice, a good recipe too. I'll have to hook you up with a coffee friend of mine who designed a coffee around another author's book, and they did that because the character came into their cafe. So that's
Okay,
that's
cool.
that's a little sneaky something that I can send you later. Sticky buns.
Oh man, that yeah, like the pecans with the that's what I think, the pecans on the caramel sauce. Yes.
Yes. The ones that you just kind of like you bite into and then it's all over your face and your
Yep.
fingers and you stick to everything. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I get that. I get that a lot. Nothing that I eat ends up clean. I end up looking like I got pulled through a head backwards. It's awful. What about donuts?
Donuts, eclairs. Gotta
Oh,
have
yes,
that.
I like a good eclair.
Yeah, chocolate on the top and the
If you
Bavarian
make it to
cream.
Scotland, I will take you to this beautiful cafe where the eclairs is like a foot long.
Oh,
They are they are to be held the size of these eclairs. But I am told, because I cannot eat a full one, my husband takes half and I take half. And it's the only
oh,
way we can eat it. But they are a foot long. They are super worth it. And you get to visit Stirling Castle too,
oh,
which is
yeah. I
an
have to get
exceptional
over
visit.
there.
Yeah. I will introduce you to a couple of conferences that you can maybe suggest to your
Oh,
publishers you need to attend.
yeah. Let me know. That would be super fun.
What about cheesecake?
Oh, just New York style cheesecake. That's my favorite thing to do is go to New York City and get that great big dense. Oh, it's just so good. Just I don't even need the strawberries on top, although sometimes they are nice, but just the plain cheesecake.
Oh yeah, there's this cheesecake in Scotland, and it is renowned cheesecake, and it's made in a small island called Orkney, and it has literally the best cheesecake you'll ever taste. Like I would say this might even challenge New York. It's
Mhm.
that good. It's called the Orkney Fudge Cheesecake, and it is oh, I will send you the recipe for you to
Oh
try
yeah,
it.
that
But
sounds good.
it is delicious. It's probably the best I've ever had. And I've had New York cheesecake and I was like, nope, does not
Oh.
match up to the good old Orkney cheesecake. What about rolls, like bread rolls?
Oh, I like the yeast ones. They're super. I just made them for Easter. I make them out of a bag that comes out of the freezer and make them quickly. But yeah, with butter
Yes.
melting in them, yeah.
I'm terrible because I used to bake all the time. I can't in my new house, but in my old house I used to bake constantly and I would have fresh baked what they call hard crispy rolls, which are
Oh,
like they look burnt on the outside, but when you open them up, they're all fluffy.
oh yeah.
And those are my husband's favorite rolls, and he kind of misses that I don't do that anymore. But now that I'm sort of getting the house to where it's livable, I think that's something I will be starting up again, and it's such a favorite of his. So the last but not least is bread. I always think freshly baked bread when I write that.
Yeah, bread. I like. We have Costco's over here. I don't know if you guys have those, and they do the cinnamon loaf, like cinnamon strudel
Oh
bread. It
right,
is
yeah,
so
yeah.
good, and that from the toaster with fresh butter on it is like yes.
You should try the four cheeses bread that they do here. It's so different. It's almost like having a slice of pizza but with some butter on it in the morning.
Yeah,
It is completely different. If I find the recipe sheet again, I will send it to you because it's
good.
really different and it's made with actual cheese. So you almost
Ooh.
get that like melty, warm goodness because it keeps like
Oh,
the bread actually moist. I used to do a lot of like herbal bread, like herb breads for my family. So like garlic bread. I used to do rosemary and thyme breads and things like that.
ooh,
Because my mom went through a huge stage because she was a chef, making all these different kinds of breads. And then I started doing it for my in-laws, and they were like, "No, please stop." Because I actually, I went through a baking spell where I overbaked and people ended up with like 30 cupcakes, 30 muffins, all these fresh baked rolls and breads, and they were like too much. So I
I
haven't
do.
done it in a long time, but I definitely have to get back to it.
That is when I do like to bake. That is probably, I'm not so crafty, but I do love baking. So,
It's weird because when I bake, I don't usually follow a recipe. Like I'll read recipes and stuff, um, but like I just sort of bake by kind of eye, if that makes sense.
No, I
Um,
do. Yeah, I do that too. My dad's and my grandma was like that. And, you know, the only problem is then it's never quite the same. I'll have to like make notes on like something
oh
so I'll know
right, yeah.
what I did last time because it's never
I
quite
made these brownies once for my mom, and I've never been able to make them the same again.
the same.
I don't know what it was. Like, I don't know what I wrote. I don't. I'm desperately sure I didn't write it down.
I know.
Um, and I can do it off memory, but I can never remember how. Like, I when it comes to writing it down, I forget every single time.
Hmm.
And she's like, "You're gonna have to write it down for me one of these days." And I'm like, "Mom, I just can't. I have to do it by eye." And she's like, "Well, you're just gonna get your daughter when you have a daughter, to write it down." And I'm thinking, "Oh, geez, I have to pass this trick on, do I?" Hmm. But yeah, like, so growing up with her as a chef, I kind of ended up cooking really young. She was one of these people that was like, "You're not going to be one of these kids that doesn't know how to cook
Hmm.
or what do the washing or iron or sew." So I kind of really got the housewife education while growing up, which sounds nice and interesting, but really not so much. Because my grandmother was very focused on that kind of thing, and she wanted me to be the perfect housewife, and that was going to be my job in life. And of course, I ended up being a writer instead. So totally didn't go to plan. Um, but there you go.
Yeah,
Uh,
my mom was an avid reader, so like the housework would just, the laundry would pile up because she had to finish that book, and she would stay up all night reading. So that's kind of my background
See,
of growing
I
up.
wish my mom had done that. I think I would have learned a little bit more from her, but it took me longer to get into reading because I struggled with the dyslexia for so long,
Yeah, that would be
and
tough.
it was I it took a long time, but when I finally got there and I realized my mom had it too, it was almost like I helped her get better while I got better myself. Um, and that's like a lot of the reason she went into her education and stuff now was because I really kind of kicked her ass, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sure you could do it." And like, I never kind of let her make excuses or back out of it. Um, and that's why we had a really close relationship till I was like 16, I think. And then I kind of went, crazy teen way, as every kid does. And, we're still kind of getting back to that time where we were close. But yeah, I mean, I used to do a lot of the chores with her because my brother was super lazy and never did anything. And yeah, like I used to get £5 from my mom to clean his room because there was no way you could get into his room sometimes. Like you push the door open and they would just be washing from the front door to the wall.
Yeah.
And the room was that bad, the dog wouldn't even lie in the doorway. Like, so yeah. I used to get the £5 note handed to me and told, "Right, go in, clean your brother's room." And I'd be like, "But do I have to?" And she'd be like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Right, okay." And it kind of kept everything, from going into World War
Yeah.
sort of mode because my mom was a very, very emotionally driven person. So yeah, I learned very quickly that doing the tidying and the laundry and stuff was a good way of stopping World War III from breaking out. So peacekeeper became also my title, I think, in the house. But yeah, I get it. Well, it's been really lovely to have you on, and I really hope that your publisher will have you on again when you have a new release coming out. We certainly have always going to have space for you.
Oh.
So you just give me an email when you've got a new release coming out, and we will book you in and have you back, and we'll talk more in detail about whatever book's coming out or what ones come out if it comes out before we can get you on. And we will certainly have fun. You're going to be part of the Book and Life family.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been fun. And yeah, I will definitely want to come back and talk some more.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about this podcast. It really is. just designed to be a cup of coffee between friends. Only we have probably a million listeners who are being flies on the wall that we're currently ignoring. But it's good fun. And, like people, I said, if you get me on Twitter, you can always send me questions. And then when people come back on, then I've got questions from the listeners and the viewers. And I always try to encourage that. But we've not gotten to that stage just yet. But it's still fun. So I like it. So that's been the show for this week, guys. You're going to need to come back next week because the guest we've got, whew, I was not expecting to have. So, with that being said, I shall see you all next time.